Hello everybody, Mannix here. It is time for another handgun review. This is going to be on the Rock Island Armory 1911 pistol and 10mm. I know that's a very impressive presentation, isn't it? If you're a 1911 fan and you are a 10mm fan and you like budget-friendly pistols, this is a choice one to get. Rock Island Armory has really impressed me with their 1911 pistols. They're semi-auto pistols. And style aside, it is very functional. Let's just get the specs out of the way first. This specific model on this one is the 51991. There's a handful of variations on this gun that Rock Island Armory manufactures. But for this version, the barrel is 5 inches long. Its overall length is 8.74 inches. Overall width is 1.3 inches. Overall height is 5.51 inches. Weighs 2.5 pounds, unloaded. Dovetail fiber optic front sight. The rear sight is an LPA MPS1 type adjustable. G10 grips is what it comes with. Black parkerized finish. They're saying it's a 4 to 6 pound trigger pull. We'll talk about that. Retails MSRP $749 US. But in the aftermarket, typical gun stores, you can get these for around $600, oftentimes a little bit less than that. Our capacity is 8 rounds with these single stack magazines. They do sell this in a variant that has double stack magazines with a considerably wider handle. Mine only came with this one. I'm going to assume yours will also only come with one if you buy one, but I have no real way to verify that. So I bought 2 more magazines separately that added a good $70 to the total cost. Yes, these are pretty expensive for what you're getting, unfortunately. I'm sure some people will argue against that. I don't think these should cost $40 each, but whatever. That's what they cost. That's the cheapest I found them at the time anyway. So looking at here, I probably spent close to maybe $630, $640 total, including the 2 extra magazines. But again, it only came with one. However, I would recommend you get an extra magazine if you're going to get one of these, because 8 rounds I feel like is kind of on the lower side for a semi-automatic handgun. That'd be great if you had a revolver that could fit that, but we're not talking about revolvers right now. Regardless, it's a really cool gun, and again, very affordable for being a 1911. Extremely reliable, haven't had any issues with it yet. It's absolutely beautiful. I instantly fell in love with the way it looks. It has almost a bluish color on these grips it comes with. It's like a really dark gray blue. It may not be blue. It actually might just be gray, but I don't know. It looked kind of blue to me, like a blue-gray. But regardless, it's very cool looking, I think. It's extremely stylistic. This gun screams style. Whether you're familiar with 1911s or not, it's extremely comfortable. I like these beveled grips we have right here. We have some really interesting texturing work done on the grips that it comes with. And a good look at the checker pattern back here. Extremely grippy. The pattern up here doesn't do a whole lot, but whatever. And a nice full grip on this thing. Not loaded, by the way. Slide release is right up here. For my hands, I have large size hands. It's a little far. So if I were to attempt to close this, it's not easy for me to do with my hands anyway. I have to extend my thumb just a little bit further. That's our mag release, by the way. I like the guard they have right here for your thumb. It is ambidextrous. Nice grips we have right here that are on a cant, as you can see right there, so you can really get a nice grip with your hand to slide the slide back. We have an exposed hammer right here, just like all 1911s do. I absolutely love this trigger on here. It allows you to build up so much pressure without moving the trigger before you fire it. I'll explain more about what I'm talking about in just a little bit. I absolutely love the fiber optic sight. I'm a huge sucker for fiber optics, especially their orange, the orange and black, and the grayish blue, whatever you want to call it. It's a really cool kind of modernized looking 1911. It's like a retro pistol, but it doesn't look like it's from the 40s. It's like a modernized version of something that would come out nearly a century ago. It's on the heavy side for only having 8 rounds. Now here's where all of the disadvantages come with this gun, not just the Rock Island Armory variant in particular, but 1911s in general. They're really sweet, they're really stylish, they're cool and all. When it comes to actual efficiency, you're usually not getting a whole lot. There's a lot of other guns out there you can get for very similar, if not cheaper prices that will give you a much higher capacity, that are made with polymer. They'll be a lot more light, easier to carry. So as far as efficiency goes, if you only maybe want one gun, you want it to be as efficient as possible, get the most out of your money, not for you. I don't care what your caliber choice is personally, and as much as I love this gun, I cannot recommend it as an everything gun that's as efficient as possible. It's a little expensive for what you're getting. That's just kind of the issue with 1911s. And although the Rock Island Armory 1911s are very, very reliable, 1911s in general are not as reliable as many, many other manufactured guns on the market for the same, if not slightly cheaper prices, particularly Glocks, but there's many, many other manufacturers out there where I could make the same exact statement. For example, although this is a 10mm, the Glock 20, which is also a 10mm, very similar price, you're getting almost double the ammo. The standard capacity in those magazines is 15. Granted, they are double stack, but the handle's almost just about as wide as this handle regardless. So you get a handle width that's almost the same, but with almost double the ammo. Those guns are much lighter because they're mostly polymer. However, on top of that, there's a few different preference differences. The safety mechanism, the sights are obviously much different, but if we're just talking size, weight, capacity, this is not a very efficient gun at all. Period. It's just not as good as other stuff you could get out there. Now, all that out the window, I absolutely love every single other thing about it. I got it because it's so stylish. That's why I picked this over the Glock 20. And because I picked the 10mm, I figured I would not need something with an even higher magazine capacity if I were to go around with that round in the first place. The 10mm is a very, very, very powerful semi-automatic handgun round. Essentially, if you're not familiar, it's a 40 Smith & Wesson with an extended shell. In fact, to be more correct, the 40 Smith & Wesson is a shrunken down 10mm. Same exact caliber size, pretty much the exact same bullet. We're just dealing with a different shell length. It's kind of like comparing a 357 Magnum to a 38 Special. You're basically taking the same projectile, the same bullet, but you're sticking it on a shell with a different length, a different height, meaning more powder. 10mm have a notoriously snappy recoil. They're very, very fast rounds. I argue they're a little bit more powerful than 357 Magnums. Some people would argue against that. There's a lot of variables, but generally speaking, I think they're slightly more powerful than those. Pretty close to those ballistics. We certainly have a larger caliber. And again, an advantage to the 10mm is that they can fit in these semi-automatic handguns pretty comfortably. If you extend this out anymore, you may be limiting that round to revolvers only. Snap cap, by the way. Another big disadvantage to the 10mm, a lot of people argue, is that they can overpenetrate, and from some ballistic tests I've seen, that can be true. A very high velocity 10mm can overpenetrate a little bit in a human attacker. Well, we're not going to talk about that too much in this video. There's a lot more to it, but it's a very, very, very high powered handgun round without reaching 44 Magnum ballistics or anything like that. But I would argue, as far as these normal sized handguns are concerned, the 10mm is probably your most powerful cartridge, generally speaking. More than the 357 SIG, certainly a lot faster than a 45 ACP, despite being a little bit smaller as far as its caliber goes. But I never see or hear issues about 10mm not doing the job if they have to. Worst case, they may overpenetrate, but it does not mean you will not cause the correct amount of damage in your target, whatever that happens to be. In fact, 10mm often is regarded as a good round for bear defense. Bears are extremely hardy creatures, very difficult to take down. You're kind of iffy with a lot of different calibers. If you don't want to carry a 44 Magnum, you don't want to go that crazy, you don't want that high of a recoil, this is a very, very, very good compromise. And once again, you can comfortably hold these in a semi-automatic handgun where the bullet has to go up a feed ramp. Now, it is pretty snappy. The 10mm is a very snappy round, has a lot of recoil, but it's completely manageable, I think, especially out of a gun with this weight. So although, like I just compared this to, say, a Glock 20, which would be considerably lighter than this, because of the extra weight right here, we actually are going to reduce the recoil a little bit. So you could see that as an advantage. And again, personally, if I'm going to go 1911, I know I'm foregoing the traditional 45 ACP. I would prefer the 10mm, and that's exactly why I got this one. Because if I'm only limiting my capacity to 8, I want to make sure those rounds are going to count. And I'm not going to need the extra 7 that the Glock 20 would potentially carry. That was simply my philosophy when I picked this one. It took me a long time to decide what caliber, what color, but ultimately this is the one I went with, obviously. No problems with the magazines inserting or releasing. They're very, very nice. Very positive clicks on them. These happen to be almost slightly rubberized at the bottoms. These magazines, the magazine it came with, the magazines I got for it, Now, I love this trigger. Once again, almost no creep to it. You first pull it and get stuck around this position, however far that is, and you keep building up pressure until you feel it able to just pull, and it instantly fires when you do. With most other guns, you'll see the trigger kind of move and creep just a little bit before it goes. Very little creep, I would say, very little travel on this trigger. That's a huge advantage. Allows you to build up pressure, and as soon as you feel like you're ready, absolutely has such a nice positive snap to it. In love with these sights. You can adjust these rear sights right here, and we have a nice fiber optic. Absolutely love these things. They really illuminate, particularly in low light situations. Not pitch black or anything, it doesn't glow, but fiber optics naturally just absorb light and reflect it back out to you. Ambient light in a room, even if you're not in direct sunlight, you can see these mildly glow, even though they're technically not glowing. Again, they're just reflecting light. Fiber optics, I think they're really cool looking, and I absolutely love these things. You can see them good enough during the day, but you can also see them even better in low light situations. It could get damaged. They can get damaged pretty easily if you somehow slipped through those guards right there that are containing the fiber optic sight. But other than that, the absolute favorite type of sight guns can come with. So let's recap here. This thing shoots like a champ. I've had no issues with it yet. I haven't had a whole lot of rounds put through it, but I have not had any major issues after I oiled it. If you bought this and you immediately started firing it, you may want to oil it up if yours looks pretty dry out of the package, whether they're supposed to or not. But if this is well oiled, maintained, I don't think you'll have many issues either. I cannot say it's going to shoot perfectly. I know they're not as reliable as many other more modern handguns are. That's just the design of the 1911, unfortunately. Again, when we're talking efficiency, I still think overall you're better off getting another brand of 10mm within this same configuration. A semi-automatic handgun at about this size, more or less, I think you can do better. Yeah, this is not going to be more reliable than most of those other pistols out there. It's certainly not going to have as many rounds, and it's most likely going to be even heavier. But because of that really long barrel, we get really good velocity. We're just pushing those 10mm even more. Because of the extra weight combined with it, we are absorbing some of the notorious recoil the 10mm has. It still is very reliable. I absolutely am in love with the trigger more than any other handgun I currently own. I like this style trigger a lot. It's very distinct, very low travel to it. I'm a huge fan of the safety mechanism. Normally, I like foregoing manual safeties regardless. Your opinion may differ, probably does. Not a fan of the magazines. I don't like how expensive these are, but I especially don't like how this can only hold 8 rounds despite having such a wide handle. To me, that simply is just a disadvantage unless you're a complete traditionalist and you want it to be as close to the original 1911 as possible. I simply don't objectively see it as a good thing. We have a lot of real estate being taken up with this gun, but not a whole lot of bullets to accommodate it, make a good use of it other than just being comfortable to grip onto. It's a little expensive and our capacity is not good, but if we're just talking about a 1911, it kicks ass, it looks really awesome. That's the whole reason I got this thing in the first place. And if you're firing 10mm, if you pick the 10mm rather than any other caliber, particularly the 45 ACP, I don't think it's a big deal that it only has 8 rounds if you're a civilian, if you're going hiking with this in a particular environment where you may run into a bear. And on top of all that, even if you think the 10mm is a little bit too overkill, a little bit too much, hey, regardless, at least you know you're extremely likely to drop your target with the 10mm, whether it overpenetrates or not. So a little bit better for more rural areas. I would not pick the 10mm for a really densely populated environment. Overall, I think the 10mm 1911 gives you a little bit more bang for your buck, no pun intended, than the 45 ACP variant does. Many are going to argue with that, but personally, because we're reducing some of the recoil, we're making use of the extra weight the gun is giving us that otherwise would just be a bad thing, I think. I also feel that the larger capacity magazine isn't as necessary as the 45 ACPs would be if you got that one. So overall, I think the 10mm is the winner of the two, but you can get whatever you want. They're very different rounds. Neither one is a winner. I just think for this configuration, for this weight, for this size, for this capacity, I think the 10mm is a more optimal choice if you're going to sacrifice all of those other things. Sometimes it's worth paying a few extra bucks to get some style, isn't it? Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to subscribe, hit that little bell notification if you do not want to miss weekly knife and gun videos, and feel free to support me on Patreon, link in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Mannix out.